NAB 2019 in New York City at the Jacob Javits Convention Center. This is sort of a fun one. I'm here with Mike Baldassari. He's a lighting designer. He's worked on Broadway, he's worked in film, he's worked in TV. You've done concerts, you've done comedy specials, a whole range of stuff. So I want to kind of jump right in. First, broad question. You've worked in a variety of fields. Lighting for TV, film, theater, how do you shift your approach when working on any of those?
Okay, well, kind of real simple. I think of them as three very different things. Lighting for theater, lighting for the human eye is organic. Lighting for television is electronic. And lighting for film is, I call it chemical. Basically, organic, you're lighting for your eye. Your eye is one of the best cameras there are. Right. It only matters what you see live.
Right.
Lighting for television is electronic. It only matters what it looks like on that monitor. What's happening live doesn't really matter. And then film, there's so many other people who touch what you do afterwards that it's equivalent to like chemical baths back in the day when a film had to go through chemical baths. So I look at them as three different things. They cross over a lot. And I try to steal what I can from one and the other when it's appropriate.
Do you find it easier to do one instead of the other? I imagine if you're lighting for the eye, I mean, you're there. You are the camera. You can see. You have this immediate feedback.
Right.
Does that make it easier than working for TV or film?
Well, I think what's difficult about theater and lighting live that doesn't exist in the other two elements is you don't have to think just about where the light's coming from, but where it's going.
Okay.
So, on a stage, unlike, a close-up of a camera, you have to care about where that light's going and what kind of shadows it's on, what is it projecting onto, all of that stuff. And then the other thing that you're really missing from the theater that you have in film and television is a lens. Right? So in film and television, you can zoom in, you can widen out, you can cut, you can change angles. You can't do any of that in a theater. The audience's relationship to the stage always never deviates.
Right.
So you have to do zoom and focus using intensity or color, all with lighting, because you don't have a camera that can do it for you.
Now, you say you try and steal what you can from one field or the other and bring it over into the other. What would you take, since most of our audience is probably thinking in terms of TV or internet, what do you take from live lighting that you can bring to the broadcast side?
I mean, I think that's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of it just has to do with balance and stuff and really trying to open your eye when you're looking at the monitor and try to imagine yourself. You have to kind of take yourself out of the element and be the person who doesn't have any of the peripheral information that you have and be able to make decisions for what's best for that monitor.
So it's less actual lighting techniques or design techniques, and it's more approach to thinking about your design and thinking about how what you're seeing, what you're reacting to.
Yeah, I think you have to really open your eyes, and that seems like such an easy thing to say, but like you really have to open your eye. I challenge myself all the time.
Right.
I'm in these television studios, and you have other information around you, but to really focus on what's on that screen, because that's the only information that the audience is going to get.
So you really can only react to what the camera lens and the sensor and the screen are doing to your design.
Yeah.
You can't really poke your head up, look around, and say, oh, I want to change that, because it might look fine on camera.
Right.
Now, one of the things that we're seeing, LED lights are obviously, especially for people who might be operating on a bit of a budget or it really have taken over the market. What are some of the challenges when working with LED lights that maybe some of our viewers might face? Types of things that they're overcoming.
There's a couple of things. One of them is with LED lights, you have to be very careful about color temperature. Right. Also, you have to be careful about not using too inexpensive of lights.
Yeah.
And I know that maybe seems very intuitive, but I think there's a lot of fixtures out there. There's a lot of stuff that's for sale, and I think you have to be very careful that you really want to use quality equipment. And there's so many sort of technical factors that go into it. I'm a designer. I don't know all of this stuff. I have very good friends who are video engineers who I work with.
Right, of course.
You know, but it's things like, CRI, color rendering index.
Yeah.
You always want to have a fixture with high CRI. It doesn't matter, you want your Home Depot lights to have a high CRI as well. Otherwise, anything you light with them is going to look terrible. So I think you do have to push for quality, and I think you can get away with less lights if they're higher quality.
Well, that's what I wanted to sort of ask about. When we're talking about LEDs from a design point of view, what are you thinking about? What are you looking at? Because I know one of the talks you're giving at NAB is LED Challenge for Film and TV.
Right.
So it's clearly something you've given some thought to from a design point of view.
Right.
What are some of those challenges, though? Like what from a designer point of view?
Well, from the design, there's some challenges we have now, and there's some challenges coming.
Okay.
Because I think one of the things, I'll talk about that first, one of the things is most of the LED equipment that's available to a designer like myself is coming out of a rental shop, and that's 3, 4, 5, 6 years old.
Okay.
But what happens in another 4 or 5 years when now we're mixing in brand new equipment with something that's maybe 10 years old? Or like with the New York shops, it's very possible to, if I specify 10 lights of some sort, but 4 of those lights may have been stuck on a Broadway show in the same color blue for 4 years. So now they show up on my job, and how do I make all of that stuff look the same? So I think that's a challenge that's coming for sure. The other kind of really big challenge, especially if you're doing a project that involves smoke and haze, which a lot of the ones I do have that. If there are concerts and that kind of stuff, is you can have flicker or video rolling in the haze. And that's really, it's something that's very difficult to chase down. It's definitely across departments have to work together. But to me, that's sort of like the biggest single thing. And the biggest issue is it's not predictable.
Right.
And I getting ready for this, I sort of did a little survey of some of my other director of photography friends, video engineers, other lighting designers, moving light programmers, and that's the consensus, is it's unpredictable.
Right.
So then it's going to be, what are you going to do when it happens?
Now, you've had a very varied career. Like I said in the beginning, you've
I've been very
worked
lucky.
on all sorts of different fields. One of the things I asked you earlier before we started was your connection to, when you're working on movies, your connection to the cinematographer, your connection to the director.
Right.
You described it as attached to the hip between the director and the cinematographer. What are you doing? What are you looking for? How does that relationship work?
I mean, usually it's one of those two people who brought me to the project. Like in the case of, I did Rob Marshall's 9, and so that was Rob and Dion Beebe. Academy Award-winning cinematographer and stuff. And Rob brought me there because I could speak his language. I had worked on a Broadway show with Rob. He's a choreographer, sort of first and foremost, so I can speak his language. But I also have to be able to speak the DP's language, or at least help him. And so I think what it comes down to is, I have to be a facilitator between those two people. But I also have to react very quickly. If the DP says something is too bright, or we having, the air is too milky, there's too many beams of light, those kinds of things, I have to react very quickly. And that's actually where it comes. Some of the techniques that I use, like with my programmer, is we'll have a way to very quickly inhibit certain lights without having to adjust hundreds of cues. Because sometimes when I'm doing like a concert sequence, it may be 100 light cues in a minute. So there's not going to be time to edit 100. So I have to find a way to selectively inhibit a master, if there were. I know it's a little in the weeds, but that's...
No. I think when you approach a project, especially for film and TV, obviously, you need to light the subject. You need to be able to see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But beyond that, as a designer, what are you thinking about? What are you looking at in the script? What are you looking at in your conversations with the director or the DP? Where do you start? What are you thinking about?
I usually start with the music. I mean, especially if it's like if it's a concert or something like that I'm lighting.
Well, sure.
Yeah, or a movie musical or one of those kinds of stuff. Absolutely the music. And then, I always think of myself, if I'm lighting like a concert sequence in a film or something like that, I'll learn the music as if I had to play it. So I really, I make the joke all the time that, when I do a Broadway show or whatever, I could be the third drummer. I couldn't be the second, but if the two other guys were sick, I could probably sit in.
Right.
So I have to learn the music that good, and then that's what I'm lighting to.
What are you trying to think about, though, in terms of design? What are you getting from absorbing that? Is it?
Well, it's always emotion.
Okay.
And so ultimately, as a lighting designer, I'm really an orchestrator. I think of myself as a musician. I started as a musician, but I'm orchestrating, and now I'm orchestrating with lights. Instead of orchestrating with a violin or a snare drum, now I'm orchestrating with Fresnels and Licos and moving lights.
Right.
So I'm orchestrating, and it's the same. I'm getting to that emotional. What is the emotional kernel? And then same thing once you get into. If it's just a straight scene of something, there has to be a reason. Well, I'm there for a reason. Like they brought me in to make this look different. What am I bringing to it?
I see.
And so it's that kind of thing.
Cool. So what projects do you have coming up or coming out that people can keep an eye out for?
I have a new Hannibal Buress Netflix special. It's in the can. I don't know when I don't know how those things get chosen when they're going to
understood.
come out. I'm doing another Netflix special for Chris D'Elia. I have 2 Broadway shows that are sort of circling. We'll see what happens to those. Broadway can have a very long gestational period.
Okay.
And then what else? I'm giving a talk at LDI, Lighting Dimensions International, in Las Vegas next month.
Okay.
I did a Broadway show this past year called In Residence, where we took over a Broadway theater and we cycled in and out different artists. And it was everybody from sort of like Morrissey to Dave Chappelle to Barry Manilow.
Oh, okay,
And so to be able to do a lighting system that we could turn over very quickly, I came up with this. It's a new, sort of a new technique that we're now, PRG and myself are patenting. It's this FlexiFest system. So it's a system to very quickly turn around the lighting plot.
Right.
So Dave Chappelle had a completely different light plot than Barry Manilow, and we turned that one around in under 2 hours.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a really kind of very different way to approach festivals and stuff. So we're going to keep pursuing some of that.
Awesome.
So that's the kind of stuff coming up in the next little bit.
Cool, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us
Pleasure,
in the booth
Brian.
today.
Okay.
This is Brian Stillman. I'm with BeTerrific. We're at NAB 2019 here in New York City. Stick around. We'll be bringing you wall-to-wall coverage throughout the next 2 days. And don't forget to check out BeTerrific.tech, where we have our agility quadricep light panel, LED panel, flexible, lightweight, weatherproof, daylight bright, all sorts of cool features. Very interesting technology behind that. It's our first BeTerrific product. Stick around. We'll be back with more throughout the day.